Line's good.
Never on.
Whoa.
Hard. Hardly.
Come on, Brent.
Line's good.
Got real close.
I hear high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh. Welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham, Scott alongside, as always. Hello, Scott.
Sean, hi.
Hello.
Usually I think of something to say, but I didn't today. So there's that. You ever tried taking turmeric for anti-inflammatory purposes?
I have not, no.
Well, supposedly it's good. That's all I got today.
Okay.
I just saw that on my desk.
Turmeric? Isn't something called turmeric?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Maybe I mispronounced it.
I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know what's right.
Anyway, anti-inflammation is especially good, after curling, because when you get old like me, you get a little inflammation there. But
yeah, and who's going to need a lot of it, Scott? All the teams who were in Prince George this weekend. A lot of games being played out at the Women's World Curling Championship, which wrapped up on the weekend. We'll talk about our game at the end for people who want to listen to that, because it was kind of interesting last night as we record this. And we will be talking about the Men's World Championship coming up. If you're interested in our preview of the men, just check down in the show notes. I'll put a timestamp for when we'll have that discussion and a brief chat about the Rachel Homan announcement. I'll put that timestamp in the show notes as well. But we will start with the Women's World Curling Championship. And Scott, I think the stat of the past 4 years on the women's side is that only one team won a world championship on this quad. And that is, of course, SIlvana Tirinzoni, that super team that was put together after the 2018 Olympic Games. The depth of Swiss curling was concentrated onto that team, and now they are 3 consecutive world champions over the past 4 years.
Yeah, Sean, it seems like putting a super team together is a pretty good way to win. Just ask Carrie Anderson and ask SIlvana Tirinzoni.
Yeah,
you're right. The Swiss women three-peat, I guess you call it, right, with a gap year in the middle. But they were like clearly the class of this field all week. Like they're just dominant. They have like a 60% last stone efficiency to convert those hammers.
Yeah,
pretty incredible. Just they scored 57 more points than their opponents, more than double the second place team in the field, which was Sweden. There's a juggernaut, a buzzsaw you don't want to run into.
Yeah, no, and just another couple of cool stats or stats just to further demonstrate how dominant they were. They were 2% better than everybody all week in terms of shooting percentage as a team. So that is kind of unheard of, to be that much better at this level over the course of the week. They only had 3 1-point games in the round robin to Germany, the USA, and to Sweden. Of course, the final was a 1-point game coming down to the end, but they're just dominant all week. And if you take the totality of the event, in the old days, they would have won and it would have been clinched by Thursday night and Friday would have been meaningless. And so it kind of feels right that they won based on this week, not just the totality of the 4 years, but this week alone, they were head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yeah, Sean, they gave up 4 steals, 4 stolen ends all week. Good. That's in 14 games.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Crazy.
Yeah. So
incredible.
Just a great performance by the team. Let's talk about the final a little bit. You talk about those multiples that they scored, Scott, and their ability to not give up steals. They didn't give up a steal to the Koreans in that final, but after the initial 3 spot that they score in the second end after blanking, the Koreans did a very good job of scoreboard management through the middle of the game. The Korea gets forced to go down 3-1, but then they get their 2 to tie the game heading into the 8th end. So full credit for Kim Eun-jung and her team to rebound and to pull the game back and through those middle ends really kind of control the game a little bit.
Yeah, that's classic scoreboard management, as you said. Forcing and then finding a way to get their two. Definitely not easy against this Swiss team. So they were able to, do what they could scoreboard wise, and then just kind of ran out of steam at the end. There was like a couple tough shots that the Swiss made Kim Yun-jin play, and so they weren't able to, finish that. But overall, very strong effort.
Yeah, and late in the game, Kim had a couple after some shots. She looked up and was confused. Right, she kind of lost the draw weight a little bit
Mhm.
at the end of the game. But let's talk about that 10th end, because tie game. Switzerland has the hammer coming home. In years past, it's going to be 2 tick shots, some peels, and a relatively uninteresting end. It ended up being a somewhat uninteresting end, but that's only because Esther made just a couple pistols with her shots. But I like this guy. Like in years past, going into a 10th end tie game, I'd be like, like, do I really need to watch it? But this one I was still compelled by because the no tick rule. So you knew that if Korea was able to get their stones touching the center line, which isn't always a guarantee, but players at this level will do it well more often than not.
Mhm.
I was excited to see how this would play out, and we saw it in the Canada game, or one of the Canada games earlier in the week. That just, even though the result might not change, the process changed, and how we got to this point in the end was different. So I liked it, but going into the 10th end and just the way that 10th end played out, what did you think? Because this is the highest profile spot that we've seen that no tick rule in place.
Yeah, it definitely made it more interesting to watch the 10th end than it normally would. Overall, I think I talked about this last week. I don't love this event for trying out this rule, but like you say, it did keep the games in doubt longer. So yeah, I mean, Esther Neuenschwander throws a double peel, rolling the guard off, like basically, oh, okay, now that's a similar result as getting the ticks on the first two, is if your second comes in and just double peels center guards and rolls away,
Yeah.
then that's the new shot to make, I guess.
Yeah, and you look at where Korea had those guards too. Yeah, they're both touching the center line, but they were on kind of opposite sides of the center line, which
Mhm.
it's not a big difference between the two of them, but there was just enough left to right separation that shot's possible. If they're perfectly lined up, maybe not so much, but just that extra couple inches here and there that allows Esther to make that shot, changes the end around. So real, not only do you have to touch the center line, but you really have to be precise on those first 2 shots to
Yeah.
extend the end. And of course they didn't, and it ends up with a pretty simple hit for Elena Patz to win that game. And the crowd kind of slow clapped it, but it wasn't a full slow clap, so I was okay with it. Yeah.
Okay, like so you're totally out on slow claps, eh?
Well, it just seemed like every time they did it, the person missed the shot. And I know that's confirmation bias. Of course, it wasn't every time.
Right.
But I would venture a guess that the shooting percentage was lower on slow clap shots than it was on non-slow clap shots over the course of the week. And I felt very validated when both Carrie Galusha and Jill Officer agreed with me. Now,
Mhm.
that is some high power individuals there who are agreeing with me on the not full opposition to the slow clap, but that it does perhaps make it more challenging to communicate, and therefore perhaps the shot percentage goes down a little bit.
Yeah, I think it might be nicer if you just, yeah, stay quiet, let the curlers do their thing, and then a nice roar once the shot is made, I think, can be more effective than a slow build up
Yeah.
to something.
Yeah, I like it when it's clear the shot's been made and it's at the hog line or something, and it's like on Alina Pats where it's just like clean, and you've won the game. And
Sure.
that's where you erupt like that. I like that. Now, if this was the wheelchair event at the Paralympics, or a wheelchair world championship, or any sort of wheelchair event, or even a Scotch doubles where there's anything with no sweeping, slow clap the hell out of the rock. I am all in
Sure.
on
Yeah.
that.
When there's no communication happening, great, go nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So congratulations to Switzerland. They finish out the quad with a world championship. Certainly a successful quad for them. They're the only ones who won a world championship. I'm sure they're still a little disappointed in the Olympics back in February, and it'll be curious to see what happens now with this team. It makes all the sense in the world for them to continue to play, but SIlvana Tirinzoni's been around for a while. Alina Pad, they've all been around for a while. If anyone wants to move along with the next stage of their life, certainly can't necessarily blame them for that. Of course, as a fan, you want to see them continue on to see what they can do in the next quad, and I would be somewhat surprised if anyone gave it up this year.
Yeah, I wonder about them going forward and how the Olympics might impact their desire to keep going, right? Didn't have the Olympics that they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So was that enough of a push, especially for SIlvana, because she's talked about being near the end of her career.
Yeah, and another 4 years is a big commitment. But you have a European Olympics coming up, and yes, I know that Italy and Switzerland are different places, but is the possibility that, especially since you didn't have any family or friends be able to come with you to Beijing, does the allure of one that's relatively close by make it more appealing and say, like, that could be a real culmination of the career potentially?
Yeah, it could be. That's a good point. And yes, it's not in Switzerland, but it's pretty close.
Yeah,
just next door, right? So
yeah. Now, a country that's not close to Switzerland is Korea, and congratulations to Kim Eun-jung on her silver medal, that she can put that on her shelf right next to her Olympic silver medal. I think the Olympic one's probably a little more going to get a little higher up on the shelf, more prominent spot. But a great week for the Korean side to come in and win that silver medal. They did benefit on Friday from Japan having to withdraw from the event. The last round robin game for Japan, second last round robin game for Korea, was a walkover for the Korean side, which put them in position to later that night beat Turkey and therefore get the second place position, which got them a bye into the semifinal. They were tied at 9-3 with Sweden and Canada, but on last stone draw, they get through because they all beat each other. So fortunate for them. That's not to say they wouldn't have beaten Japan. Certainly they're capable of beating Japan, but just a nice little fortune, twist of fate for that team. Scott, what did you think of the Korean side? We've seen them. We talked about in the preview that occasionally they're up, occasionally they're down. This was an up week for them. And whenever Eun-jung has her draw weight, it's I know it's a simplification to say that's when they're going to do well, but she really had that this week and drew them out of some tough spots.
Yeah, I think they benefited a lot from a soft start to the schedule. They sort of played all the teams that you would expect them to beat up front. They raced out to that 6-0. Came right back to 6-3 though, with 3 consecutive losses. No, that's not true, is it? No, it should have been 3 consecutive losses, one against Canada. We'll talk about it, but they sort of beat the teams that you would expect them to beat and struggled more against the teams that you would expect them to struggle against. So I would say that it was a good week by results. It was a good week for them sort of on the ice with their legs under them, but they didn't show me that, like, we'll talk about the Canada semifinal too. I don't think they played particularly well in either of those Canada games, and they really benefited from some mistakes that got them to where they are. Yes, they won the games that were in front of them, but like you said, that game against Japan, having the walkover in it was a real big advantage, because not only did they not have to play it, well, they win it, they don't have to play it. They get some practice time and don't have to, face the grind of that 12th game at the end of a long week. And Japan was a team that was in the mix for the playoffs. It wasn't like Scotland, where they lost their first 2 and then, okay, everybody gets a win against them. It's even playing field, right? So a pretty big advantage there. And then Carrie Anderson made mistakes that lost the 2 games against Korea, and those are the difference, right? And her getting not only to the gold medal game, but getting that second spot in the playoffs.
Yeah, so just before we get out, because I know you're fired up about those two games against Korea.
Fired up.
Before we move off of that to Team Canada, just to note that for the week, 4th overall shooting percentage for the Korean side, and some big 1-point games. Certainly the round robin game against Canada, but they beat the Czechs 8-7. They beat Norway 7-6. So those are games that are coming down to those skip stones, and she made some big shots in tight spots against, again, those teams that you would expect them to beat, that, like you say, put them in position to get into the playoffs, get into that 2 spot. So a really good week for them. And we should also note the choreography they did on the Walk of Champions up the ice. And I wasn't sure what it was at the time. I just was enjoying that they were doing it. And somebody online, I saw it today, and I think it might have come up on the girls' podcast as well, that they thought it was they were doing a maple leaf as a salute to the crowd.
Okay, I didn't see it myself, so
okay. So there you go. So congratulations to Team Kim. After 4 years ago at this time, or maybe 3 years ago at this time, kind of amazing that they've made it all the way back to this point, and they are again a high-level team after everything that they went through following the 2018 Olympic Games. So congratulations to them. And let's move on, Scott, to our bronze medalist. That is Team Canada, Carrie Einarson, her first World Championship medal after not medaling last year, and of course not having the opportunity to medal back in 2020. But Scott, you were fired up over those 2 Korea games.
Well, fired up, yeah. I mean, just like some weird choices that they made strategy-wise, and then missed execution rather. I know that we don't like to criticize Team Canada. It's like,
well, you can.
Like, they made bad
personal
shots
about it.
Right, we can't be personal about it. Listen, they're a great team. They've won 3 straight national championships. They're going to come back for more. They'll be in the hunt no matter what. They're really, really, really good. Carrie Einarson made 2 like really bad shots on. We'll start in the semifinal in that 9th end where they were stacking all the stones up. Canada had 2 in the house, but at the end of the day, on the last shot, Korea's sitting 2. Canada has another one in the house. For some reason, she thought, let's play this like skinny double. When you hit it, you hit one, you take your point, you're up 2 going to the last end. Mm-hmm. I didn't really see the advantage in going for the skinny double to try and score 2 and be up 3 versus being up 2. So I think that was a mistake strategically. And then not only that, she missed it because she was in between the 2 shots and gave up a steal of 1, so it was tied. I think if you're able to play the tick shots in the 10th, maybe that's something you try, right? But since you can't, and 2 days ago you played this same team in a game where you lost because you missed an easy shot. I don't know. I thought it was the wrong call. What did you think?
I didn't dislike it as much as you did, if I'm being honest. I thought if you make that thin double, then you've won the game, and you're playing it such that if you miss it the way that she missed it, and she hit it too thick and goes over the top of the second Korean stone, if you miss it, you're still tied with the hammer. So I wasn't that upset about it. I thought, okay, go try to win the game. You have it, you have that chance. She's somebody who wants to play the hit. That's her strength. That's where she will lean to. And you saw it in that bronze medal game too. At one point, she plays an angle run back that could have been for 3. She eventually gets it for 2, but that's where her eye goes. That's what she wants to throw. And I didn't see it as that risky, or as risky as I think you saw it in the moment. And I just thought she's playing aggressively. She's trying to end the game right now. That's how I took it, and she missed it. And the issue more for me was in that 10th end, they
Yeah.
just couldn't quite get things into a spot where, like, she didn't really have a shot at the end of the game. And it was the execution in the 10th end that I thought was unfortunate for them as a team. They just couldn't quite get the peels the way they needed them. Then Korea is able to stack things up in the house on them with 2 stones essentially on the button. And it just, I know at the end of the game, like that Russ thought the final guard from Kim and Jung was bad because it left this long center run for Carrie Anderson. But I was sitting there thinking, like, that's a 20-foot run on a nose hit. Like, that's not an easy shot. So I don't know. I think the 10th end more was the execution issue. I understand having an issue with the strategy decision, and certainly scoring is never really a bad thing. Sometimes it might be, but it's never fundamentally wrong to score a point. But I understood it.
Okay. And like I say, if you're able to play those tick shots in the 10th end, I understand it more. But this is a team against whom you were stolen on in the 10th and an extra 2 days ago, and they just stole one to tie the game. Like Canada, they scored 3 in the 7th end. Like, so they scored a big 3 to go up.
Yeah, they score 3 and then they give up 2 back.
A 3 in the 7th, and they gave up a 2 right back. And we were watching this together, and I said, "Oh well, like you give up this 2 right back." That was also sort of like, really? Like, did you really have to do? And so it seemed to me like a bit of mixed execution on that end too. And I even said to you, like, well, they're gonna steal and win it. Like, I had no confidence in them at that point, based on the way that they were playing and based on what had already happened. Val wasn't as good in that semifinal as she had been earlier in the week, and if you look at the wins and losses, it was how Val Sweeting goes, so goes the team, which is usually the case with thirds. But just wasn't what I would expect from a team that's so good to put themselves in that kind of a position. Like, it was a pretty easy nose hit for 1, and then you're up 2, and okay, maybe they get a 2 and you go to the extra end then, but that gives you 2 shots rather than just the 1. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you have 2 shots to end the game.
Yeah, I mean, she did have to roll on the hit. I don't think it was just a nose. I think there was a little roll to the inside on the shot stone to be sure about it. So I mean, it's not a gimme by any means. So yeah, I think we just disagree on the call there. And when you refer to what happened before, you're talking about the game Thursday night or Wednesday, whenever it was, against
Thursday
Korea,
night,
in which the Koreans steal 10, steal 11 to win the game. And those 2 ends, I didn't feel really in either case were strategy issues, to me at least. In the 10th end, they didn't get the peels the way they wanted to. And then in the 10th end on Carrie's last one, she just overthrows it. And then similarly in the 11th end, it's just a miss. Those are physical errors that are going to come up in the course of a game, and that happens, right? So it's a game, yes, they should have won, but they didn't.
Right. And so and also in the extra you had like missed double peels and stuff. And that 10th end shot, if we're saying Canada is great at curling and Canada should win world gold medals and stuff, that's like an easy shot. You have to make that shot. And yes, of course you can forgive not making it, right? Because, like, whatever, it's a game. But if like Team Canada wants to look back and see why they lost this event, why they didn't get a gold medal in this event, I think you look at that shot in the 10th end first and foremost of that game Thursday night, and that's an easy hit for the win. They give up a steal, you go to the extra end, this no tick rule is still in play. It's messing with their heads a little bit, I think. And then they're just not able to execute. And on the last one, it was like a raise she was trying, and it just didn't go to the right spot. I'm looking at the shot chart here.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those, like, what are we even doing out here, man? Like, oh, she tried to like come down to it and tap it, and it rolled too far. This is a situation where I think the team's approach was, oh, this is how we usually play, not factoring into the equation like, oh, we can't play tick shots this week.
Mhm.
So I guess my strategic criticism is more maybe aimed at the rule rather than the team themselves. But then, yeah, those physical errors are what's going to cause you to not win.
Yeah, and that's what happened. I mean, you could look at it though too. There's a scenario, a very plausible scenario, in which they win the game on Thursday night and they still play Korea in the semifinal. Now they have the hammer, excuse me, to start the game in that scenario. But
Yeah, but so
still could have lost.
you saw that the two teams with the buys made it to the final, right? Like, I think
Okay,
there's an
but
advantage to
Scott, no, I don't like
not playing that
but
semi.
no, because we have a bevy of data from the past few Scotties and Briars in which the team that had the bye on Sunday into the final that didn't have to play the semifinal after winning the 1-2 game has lost. Or last year in the bubble, the team that just got straight through. So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think there's a definitive sense of, oh, having the bye is a fundamental advantage, because we've seen so many teams lose with the bye,
So okay, maybe not a fundamental advantage, but it is an advantage.
I guess.
Well, you get hammer and you get to rest.
The hammer's the biggest advantage. But again, even at that, we've seen a lot of teams lose in that scenario.
Yeah, but
So-
well, I'm saying, like, based on how they performed at last year's World Championships,
Yeah.
that having the confidence of finishing in that top two and getting a bye to the semifinal could have been advantageous to this team.
Potentially, but this team was so much better this year than last year. It was more
Much better
relaxed
this
over the
year.
course of the week.
Yeah.
It was a much improved performance for them, and they come away with the bronze medal, as we said, beating Sweden in that bronze medal game. And I would just, going back to something else you said, Scott, like, like the expectation of Canada winning gold medal. I don't expect them to win.
No, Sean, you and I don't. But like, when
like-
we're talking about their expectations of winning and the collective that we see come out on curling Twitter, right? Like, these are things that I can point to say why they didn't win.
Yeah, and again, they would expect to make those shots too, right? Like
Yeah.
that's how they would expect it. And so yeah, so I don't think we're saying anything that in terms of those specific shots that, you know, it's the OG Ananobi that I don't shoot to miss, right? So
Yeah, and Sean, this team should have represented Canada and did represent them really well.
Yep.
And I have no problems with that. I'm just like, I was frustrated because I thought that there was more there that they could have done.
All right. Well, you know who else probably thinks there was more there that could have been done? Anna Hasselborg, still looking for her first World Championship victory. She loses the semifinal game against Switzerland. Was not the feature game, of course, on TSN, but from the updates, it looked like a pretty good game back and forth. And ultimately, of course, Switzerland comes out on top. So going to be a disappointing week for Anna Hasselborg, not getting that World Championship. Come back next year. You know, she's the Brooklyn Dodgers here at this point in terms of looking for that World Championship, and see what happens with that team, assuming that everyone comes back. But certainly, I'm sure Anna Hasselborg will be a little disappointed at what her week was.
Yeah, I think so. Very tight game back and forth with Switzerland. A bit of bad luck for them to finish in fourth place and have to play that game against Switzerland in the semifinal. They had them sort of bracketed so that it wouldn't have reseeded.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, even if Canada had lost to Denmark, then Denmark would have played Korea. And so a bit of a tough thing for Hasselborg. They probably needed to be better on their last own draws for the week. They finished third amongst the Korea, Canada, and themselves.
Yeah. So no, Korea was
seventh for the week.
Yeah. So Korea was 37.42 centimeters, Canada 37.69. That's the difference on that buy or not. And then Sweden, down at 42.09 centimeters over the course of the week. So that gets you third place amongst those teams.
Yeah, and the game against Switzerland, you're right. We just got updates here and there as it was happening. Tight game as always between those two. It's always going to be good. Came down to the very end, so tough break there. And then the next day, it seemed like they were just a little bit off. But Carrie Anderson and their team, to their credit, regrouped, played really, really well on Sunday morning to capture that bronze medal.
And the other playoff teams mentioned it. Canada beat Denmark. Full credit, Madeline Dupont. She comes through the week going 7-5 to qualify for the playoffs. Gave Canada a bit of a run in that qualification game. They were a lot of fun, dancing, having a good time. Scott, we gave you a lot of grief on Twitter and in our group chat with Rocks Across the Pond for your lack of faith in Madeline Dupont's ability to make the playoffs. And Scott, I will give you the floor right now. If you ever want to go to Copenhagen, maybe this is your chance for a bit of a mea culpa for them to let you into the country.
I don't know, Sean. They were -9 on the week. They had 4 points and scored against them. They're fine. They're fine.
Back-to-back playoffs.
Yeah, back-to-back playoffs. Full credit there. But they beat who they were supposed to beat, and they didn't beat who they weren't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, big win. They did beat the Koreans. That was the Koreans' third loss there. So that was a nice win for them. No question about it. But yeah, nip and tuck against Turkey. They lost to the Swiss, the Swedes, and the Canadians. So yeah, they won where they were supposed to get to 7-5. So good for them. The Americans round out the playoff field. Corey Christensen and her team finish 8-4 to get that 5 spot. Good week for them. Debut team. I wasn't expecting that many wins out of this team. I would have thought the final spot, especially once we got later into the week, would have gone to potentially Japan. Maybe Denmark would have fallen out. I know we talked about that last week, and I think that's what you thought would happen, Scott, that Denmark would fall out, Japan would get in. Of course, tough situation for Japan at the end of the week. But good job, Corey Christensen. Nina Roth and that team is still there. Be interesting to see what potential lineup shakeups go down in the United States. But it was nice to see that you could have another women's team from the United States come and be competitive at the world level. So that's just a good thing for the state of the sport in the United States.
For sure. They were a good story this week and a fun team to watch too.
Yeah. So we touched on the Japanese situation. Of course, COVID goes through the team on Friday morning. There were tests that came back positive, so they had to withdraw. They end up 6-6, and really all we can say about that is hope everyone's feeling well and can get back to Japan safely when the time comes. Round out the field, Norway goes 5-7, as does Germany. Italy, Stefania Constantini, a bit of a disappointing week for her at 4-8. But again, the focus for her and that team is going to be 2026 and building to that. The Czech Republic, 2-10. Of course, the Scottish team, they got 2 games in, lost them both by somewhat sizable margins, and then they had to leave because of COVID, as we talked about last week. And then perhaps the secondary story of the week, Turkey and Desal Yildiz making her debut and the country's debut at a world championship. They get the win over the Czech Republic on Wednesday or Thursday night. And good job, Prince George crowd, recognizing what that was. Big ovation for the team. So we talked in the preview, Scott, if they got one win, that would be great. A lot of fun. They actually end up in 11th place in the 13-team field because of the win over the Czech Republic. So full credit to them. And I'm going to say that this isn't the last time we see her at a world championship. Maybe not next year, but I think she'll be back.
Yeah, for sure. The future is bright with curling there in Turkey. And that was really fun to watch them win that game. And yeah, like you say, get the ovation, wave to the crowd. They were sort of fan favorites among the crowd there that week.
So there you have it, Women's World Curling Championship. Anything else, Scott, that came up for you from Prince George?
It was a lot of fun to watch. I'm I'm not on board with the WCF's new streaming place, but like I wish it was back on YouTube. But
Yeah.
we'll take what we can get, and I'll try to be better at it for the men's worlds.
Yeah, it's suboptimal for sure. The YouTube one is much better. I'll say the Canadian Juniors is going on right now. I just sort of hopped up on YouTube because Google knows all of the algorithms and knows what I want to watch. It's just right there. It's so easy. And but hey, if it's making money, then I guess it's successful.
Exactly.
All right. So again, congratulations to Switzerland on their World Championship and affirming our statement that Swiss women were the best in the 2010s in our decade recap back in the summer. So let us move on to the next and final, or second to final, World Championship of the spring. That is going to be the Men's World Curling Championship in Las Vegas. And as of this moment, Scott, I am scheduled to be there for some of it. I'll be there for part of the opening weekend at the Men's Worlds.
Yeah, that's exciting for you, Sean. Getting to go all the way to Las Vegas. Beautiful, what do they say? Lost wages. And post up there at the Orleans Casino and Hotel. Great venue. It was really fun going for the Continental Cup. So I'm excited for you to get the chance to go and check out some of the curling.
Yeah, it should be a good time. This is my third time, I think, going down for a curling event there at the Orleans. As you say, it's a wonderful venue for curling. And in terms of the lost wages, I'm up from the Orleans Casino in my life. So maybe I'll just keep it that way. Just won't play.
There you go.
But I have a strategy that has worked out well. And my fear, Scott, is if I lose now, that the strategy, which is fundamentally flawed, I know, but since I'm up on it, I'm like, well, it works. So I don't want to play and then lose, because then I lose the ability to say that the strategy makes any logical sense, which it does not. But
it does not. Yeah.
So, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm excited to go. Same format as the Women's World Championship. 13 teams in the field for a 12-team round robin. And like the women's field, I would argue that this is a somewhat compromised field compared to what we've seen in the past. China, of course, did not send a team to the Pacific Asia Curling Championship on either the men's or the women's side. So you don't have a Chinese representative. A bigger deal, I think, on the women's side than on the men's side in terms of strength of field. You also don't have Russia, as of course they have been banned from WCF events. Finland takes their place as the final team from the world qualifier. And as we go through the list, a couple high profile teams not there. So Scott, how would you just assess the overall state of this field, looking at who's there, who's not?
Well, to be honest, Sean, I'm having a lot of trouble because the World Curling Federation website just lists all the countries and not the teams. So I'm furiously clicking through, and you know what? Wikipedia will be my resource.
Okay. So
as I'm not able to find anything else. So obviously some of the big ones is that Ross Patterson is going for Scotland and not Bruce Mowat. Corey Dropkin will be there for the US and not Schuster. And
Correct.
Then there was another one.
Yannick Schwaller, I would say, was the other big one that Peter de Cruz, they went winless at the Swiss Championship after coming back from the Olympics. It's hard to really blame them for that. So it'll be Yannick Schwaller in the field there. And so those are probably the biggest names that are missing from the field. If you add in, of course, the Russians as well. So not the strongest of field, certainly not as strong as we saw last year, but as we just saw with the women's, that doesn't mean that we can't have a fun event. So Scott, I'm going to go through the teams. I have them all listed here of who's there. I have a stat or two for each team, and I've divvied them up into tiers, as we like to do on the show sometimes for previews. So the first tier I have as the teams who I think can win. So let's start with the 3-time defending world champion and the reigning Olympic champion, Nicholas Edin. Scott, you want to hear just a fun little stat too? Or here's a question, not even a stat, but what year do you think is the last time Nick Edin nor a Canadian won the men's world championship?
2012?
Ooh, okay. You went further back. It's 2014 with Thomas
14.
Ulsrud. And then in 15, it was Nick Edin, 16, Kevin Cooey, 17, Brad Gushu. And then all the ones since then have been won by Nicholas Edin. So 3-time defending champ. The only question really, Scott, is how are they post-Olympics? They did not win the Swedish National Championship. In fact, they missed the playoffs at the Swedish National Championship. Now, it's possible that they were having a very, very good time at that Swedish National Championship as the reigning Olympic champions, probably, kissing babies, shaking hands, doing all that thing that reigning Olympic champions do. But a minor red flag, perhaps?
Perhaps, yeah. To not make the playoffs, that's pretty weird. I was wondering when I saw that if Sweden might send another team, being like, you guys have won many in a row. And sorry, going back to your question, Sean, Nicholas Edin won in 2013 as well, right?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, in Victoria. So so my 2012 guess was based on that one, but
Right.
2014 for sure. Yeah, I don't know that they're going to be my pick going forward, which is probably stupid because neither of us picked Switzerland to win the women either.
Right.
But yeah, maybe they were just taking it easy, knowing that they had this birth home and cooled out, and wanting to give other players something to talk about at the bar for years and years to come.
That's
I
right,
beat Nicholas Edin in the national championships. So
yeah, well, somebody else gets the national championship here, which was also the case. I looked it up that they didn't win in 2017, I believe, the Swedish national championship either. I don't think they participated in that event as somebody was injured. Maybe it was Nick Edin after one of his surgeries, but they got to go to the World Championship that year as well. So within the last 5 years, a couple folks have banners on their walls as yeah, on their walls. So we'll see what happens with Nick Edin and his team, but certainly a favorite going in. The other team, Scott, that I think can win is Brad Gushu, Team Canada, coming off that rather remarkable Brier victory. They will be going for their second World Championship. They won back in 2017, as I mentioned, lost in 2018 to Nick Edin in the Orleans Arena in that gold medal match. So those are the two teams I think can win. And I say this when I didn't give Gushu a chance in the Brier. I don't know. Like I would feel weird saying, well, they don't have a chance here either, because obviously they do, but how much reserve do you have as a human being? I know they rested a bunch over the past couple weeks, but it's quick turnaround to quick turnaround to quick turnaround, and also more time zones, right, from China to Newfoundland, now to the West Coast, which is harder for someone from Newfoundland because it's 4.5 versus 3 hours. But he also said on that curling show they're not going to stay in the hotel there. I guess they're probably going to rent a house, go in and out from the arena, so they're not always surrounded by folks. But I don't know, Scott, what do you think? Because this is the tier to me as the teams who can win. To me, it's too deep.
Yeah. There's dark horse possibilities there for sure, but these are the two definite standouts among the field, with Mowat not being there. So I think getting a house is the right idea. They'll be able to cook their own food. The families can come and stay with them if they want, without it being too much distraction, hopefully. And the arena is great because it's attached to the hotel, which is attached to the casino. So for the fans going, it's perfect, right? Just wander down the hall to the arena and there you are. But when you're a player, I could see get out of there. That's going to be the best way to go. So I think that's a good move. And it was between these two when I was picking my winner. So
all right, well, let's move on to the next tier as the teams that should be gunning for the playoffs. And hey, upsets might happen and maybe make it into a gold medal game. And I'm going to start with Yannick Schwaller and the Swiss side. He's had a pretty good year this year. He's 48-24 on the season, but combined 2-6 at the Grand Slams this year. Did not make the playoffs in either of those. He did win the 2019 silver at the European Championship in one of the rare occasions where he's been able to play as Team Switzerland. Won the Baden Masters earlier this year, beat Nick Edin in the semifinal, Peter de Cruz in the final there. But I don't know. They can beat anybody in this field, certainly, but can they put it together over the course of the whole week to be in position to capitalize on something next weekend or a week and a half from now? I don't know, but I would say they're probably the top of this next tier.
I would agree. It's between them and Patterson for me, who I'm sure we'll talk about next. That's at the top of the next tier. If they can put it together and get it going, they're going to be really, really tough to beat. The thing is, their variability is a little bit more than we see with Sweden or Canada. The floor is a little bit lower.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that. I mean, they got swept in the Swiss Olympic qualifier, for instance. So it will be interesting to see how they come in as a team that probably a lot of teams are looking at in this field thinking, oh, that's one of the better teams here. And it's probably one of the first times that they would have that level of expectation potentially on them and on themselves. So be curious to see how that plays out. You're right, Scott. Next team in this tier for me is Scotland. Ross Patterson throwing the 4 stone. According to the World Curling Federation info that I got, Kyle Waddell is going to call the game, and Ross Patterson is going to throw 4th in a bit of a lineup shakeup for this team. Kyle Waddell was the second on the Olympic team back in 2018, skipped by Kyle Smith, that team that went 5-4 at the Pyeongchang Olympics. Scott, we've seen Ross Patterson at some Grand Slams. We know he can play. Jonathan is certainly very high on him. And this is a good chance for him and the rest of the team to really break out. And who knows how many chances they're going to get at this stage, especially for Ross Patterson at his point in his career. He's older than Bruce Mount. And
which is crazy, right?
So how many chances is he going to get to come out of that association?
Yeah, I think this is like you said, one of their only chances. We'll see if they're able to, perform given the challenges that went on to their being here from Team Mouat. There's, a bit of a change to the team, but they're super strong. All the players are really good. We saw Patterson win a Grand Slam a couple of years ago, so he's capable of playing with this caliber of teams. It's whether they bring it all together for that week. Again, it's I could see like a lower floor than for Canada or Sweden, but the ceiling is the same.
All right, let's move on, Scott. This next team might surprise you a little bit as to where I have them, but I have the Koreans next up, skipped by Changmin Kim. He and second Si Hyung Seung were 4th in 2018 playing at the World Championship, and Soo Hyuk Kim, who is the 3rd, he skipped the team back in 2019. That team went 1-11 over the course of that event. So there is experience on this team, but not a lot of experience that has found success. That team in 2018 did finish 4th, but not a medal amongst this group at the World Championship. But there's enough experience here, Scott, that I put them ahead of some of the other teams in the field.
Okay, yeah, I am surprised by that, Sean, for sure. That you're right. After 2018, I think even I might have picked them to make the playoffs in 2019, and they returned that 1-11 or whatever performance. Yeah. So yeah, this is like the ultimate variability team, right? That they have gone, well, not all of them, right, but have gone 1-11 or could make the playoffs. I don't think I would have them ranked number 5 among the teams here, but yeah, they'll be. I would hope. Because it's fun to watch, but their high upside is playoff conversation.
All right, another team that I think will be in the playoff conversation, the Americans. Corey Dropkin is going to be making his debut at a World Championship. His team, the Young Bucks, as they brand themselves, have Joe Polo throwing the 3rd stone, making his 7th World Championship appearance. So, Joe brings up the average age of this team a little bit, but it's good to have that experience, I think, on the team, Scott, for a guy who's going to be there. And don't discount the potential pressure of being the host team. In the past for these events in Vegas, certainly it's a very Canadian crowd and a very pro-Canadian crowd, but there are going to be some Americans there too, and a lot of Canadians will cheer for the American team when they're not playing against Canada. So,
Yep.
there is something there to be said about being the host team. So I think having Joe Polo there to guide through that, but also guide them through what a world championship is like and the extra little things that come along with it. It's good to have that experienced hand there. But Corey Dropkin can certainly make all the shots. We've seen that at various events, including the Olympic qualifying event where he played John Schuster. Very, very tough. And Schuster was very complimentary, saying that's the toughest that he's ever had to work to get to an Olympic Games. So I don't know, Scott. I think certainly playoff expectations for this team.
I think so. Yeah, this is the up and coming rink on the men's side in the U.S. We saw the women in the U.S. ascend sort of the next rink and do really, really well in Prince George. So I would expect something similar from this team. Yeah, they should be knocking on the door of the playoffs by the end of the week.
Now, a team that has gone through the first timer, starting to build up the experience, that's Germany. Sixten Totzig, he is back after going 4-9 last year in the bubble and 3-6 at the European Championship earlier this season. Did not make it into the Olympic Games. Scott, still obviously a young guy, overall a young team. We talked about this with some of the teams on the women's side. Maybe this is a field that, since it's a little more open, this could be his chance to take that next step, maybe get into the playoffs and potentially challenge for a medal.
Fun fact, Sean, did you know that Sixten Totzig is a millennium baby born January 1st, 2000?
Wow.
Crazy,
How about
right?
that? I think that was planned. I think his parents planned that.
Yeah, I think that's it. You schedule the delivery for that day.
Yeah, you induce right there and get it.
Yeah, probably. Pretty cool coming back to the World Championships again this year. Like you say, they're young, they're getting experience, they're quite good. Whether they're ready this year, I'm not sure. With the Daniela Jentsch team, they've been there so many times and they've shown it in spurts. But I would say this German team still like simmering, not quite ready to boil over just yet.
All right. Then the last team that I have in this tier, Scott, that's Norway. Magnus Ramsfeld will be skipping this team. Went 2-10 in 2019. Of course, this is not the team that qualified Norway for the event. That was Stefan Wallstad, who qualified out of the European Championship and, of course, went to the Olympics as well. But they are not playing here this week. It is Magnus Ramsfeld. So I have them sort of at the bottom end of this potential playoff team tier. Just we haven't seen them a lot. When we have seen them at the Worlds, not a lot of success for Magnus so far.
Sean, I'm shocked that this is the last team in your tier, and we'll get to that. Wikipedia is wrong, so I'm going to have to go change the Norway entry on Wikipedia because that does have Stefan Wallstad there representing Norway. Yeah, if it's not Wallstad, Sean, I don't think that Norway is going to be close to the playoffs this year. Ramsfeld won Norway 2019, and sort of the young up and coming team replacing Thomas Olsrud, and things didn't go great. So it's nice to see them get another shot at it. But there's a team that we haven't talked about yet, Sean, that I would definitely put above them in my rankings.
Really? Who am I missing? Oh, you're right. Sorry, I skipped a team that I actually had written down ahead of them. So you're right. Yes, Italy.
Okay.
Yes, I have them written down ahead. But yes, I just skipped over them for whatever reason. So yes, Italy would be in this tier as well and would be higher up. Joel Reiternaz is back. And of course, that team went 7-6 last year. A little disappointing 3-6 performance at the Olympics, but Amos Massaner was flying high off of his gold medal in the mixed doubles. So yes, they are back, and I do have them. My expectations of them, yes, are higher than of the Norwegian side. I just did miss them. So you're high on the Italians, Scott?
Yeah, I'm quite high on the Italians this week. I don't know. I just like their team. I think against this field, they should be primed to make it into that playoffs, especially with the 16 playoffs. Just I think it's their turn.
Okay. All right, good stuff. So let's go on to this final tier, Scott. Teams that I'm not super optimistic about their chances to make the playoffs, but I've pulled some stats to demonstrate why nobody should take them lightly when they go play them. And I'm going to start with the Czech Republic and Lucas Klima. He is making his, I believe, debut at the World Championship. Went 4-5 at the European Championship earlier this season, but Scott, very close games there. Had 2 1-point losses, 1 2-point loss. So very easily could have been above 500 and potentially into the playoffs there. During that event, beat Nicodine, also beat Stefan Wallstad. So those are 2 really good wins there. In terms of shooting percentage, lower end of the pack, not great. They did struggle on last rock draw, so you're going to want to improve that and start the game from that position of power. But ultimately, Scott, they were very good on some of the other peripherals. 54% force efficiency. For context, Sweden was 57% in that event. So they can hang with teams. So don't sleep on them, because they can make some shots, and you could be looking up at the end of the game thinking we're losing.
Yeah, definitely good shot maker. He did play in the 2015 Worlds with Yuri Schnittel, I think. Yeah, Yuri Schnittel. So not his first rodeo. He was the 3rd in that event, but his debut skipping here. So we'll look out for it. Yeah, they could put a scare into some teams, sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
right,
also, before we go, Sean, 4 different curling clubs represented on that team.
Oh, that's fun.
So every player from a different club, pretty fun. There'll be the test for whether Canada still needs residency rules or not.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that used to be the rule in Canada. You had to be from the same club, not just the same town or province. Yeah. All right, let's move on to the Dutch, one of our favorite teams. It's Wouter Goskins is back, of course, with the Jaap van Dorp. This team has struggled in the past, 2-11 last year, 1-8 at the Euros. Did have to go to that World qualification event, but they came through it and they won the last game against Finland to get this spot. They are going to have to improve on their defense. They gave up 20 multiple ends in the European Championship in 9 games. Also gave up 12 steals against. So they're going to have to improve that. But what is good for this team is that Wouter can do some magic here. Now, too often he's asked to do it, and it's rare to make those crazy angle shots, but he is capable of it. So you don't necessarily want to be in a situation late in the game where he has some sort. It's kind of like John Epping 10 years ago, where John Epping had the shots, but he just wasn't putting them together consistently enough. And Wouter's a little like that, with just even less consistency, maybe. But just, yeah, don't give him a crazy shot, because he can make it at the end of a game.
Yeah, I think that maybe they think, oh well, we'll clean this up later with some double peels, and then you can't, and you get into trouble. But if there's one team or person I want you to interview, Sean, when you go down to Vegas, it's Wouter and Jaap.
All right. Put them on the top of the list. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Rounding out the field, the team that got in after the Russians were banned from this event, that is Finland. They lost the final World qualification game, as mentioned, to the Netherlands, skipped by Kalle Kiskinen, his 7th appearance at the World Championship, last time in 2016 as an alternate. But Scott, he was the second on Markku Usi Pavlniemi's silver medal winning team back in 2006. So obviously he can play a little bit, and certainly you don't want to take him lightly, because unlike most of the players in this field, he's got an Olympic medal.
Yeah, that's pretty cool fact. Usi Pavlniemi is one of the great names. They call him U15 back in the day, but No, that's good. Yeah, if they win a couple, they'll be happy.
Yeah.
But Sean, that's not the last team in the field because we haven't talked about Denmark.
According to the World Curling Federation, it's this team that is going to represent them this week is skipped by Tobias Thun.
Oh, is it? So
That's what's in their press release.
I'll tell you what, Wikipedia failed me again. That's 2 strikes, Wikipedia. 2 strikes. I'm not going to stand for a third. So yeah, Tobias Thune is the other sort of the other team from Denmark,
Right.
and he was slated to be their alternate there at the World. So who else is on the team, Sean?
This is all they're giving me on the World Curling Federation release.
Okay, so maybe tune into Rocks Across the Pond for a better
I don't know, like
preview of Danish curling.
Yeah,
but
their website isn't great. I went through the media guide, which doesn't have rosters. So it's just going on this press release that they sent out, and it says for Denmark, skipped by Tobias Thune, who's also making his second appearance, but first as skip. So
okay. So yeah, we'll see what we get. Some combination of Danish curlers. They're pretty fun to watch. I guess I don't have as much a hate on for them as I do Madeline Dupont and team. But no, they should be fun to watch. They made the Olympics, which was a huge accomplishment for them this year for the federation. So we'll see what they can do at the Worlds to keep that momentum going.
All right, Scott, let's do it. Let's just do podiums for this. Who is your podium, or what is your podium for the 2022 Men's World Curling Championship?
Oh boy, Sean. Well, we picked 6 playoff teams for the women's, so I picked 6 for.
All right, well, go all 6 then. Go all 6.
So I'm picking Canada to win with Sweden, Scotland, USA, Italy, and Switzerland.
Okay. I will go with Canada to win. A nice feather in the cap of that Gushu team beating Sweden in the final. Then I will take the Americans, the Germans, the Koreans, and the Scots.
One more
playoff teams. Isn't that 4 more?
You gave 4 more, but there's 6 teams that make the playoffs.
Yeah, Canada, Sweden.
Oh, you didn't say Sweden.
Oh, sorry. So there you have it. Those are my 6. I'm picking Sweden to finish second. So
very good.
There you have that. That is the 2022 World Men's Curling Championship, Pacific time out in Vegas. So 2 Pacific time World Championships, which I guess that's better from a Canadian perspective than like a Pacific one and then like one in Asia or something.
Yeah. I mean, I got a little mixed up. They wouldn't start the games till noon here, so I'd sort of forget about them by the time they were going. But it's better than the alternative. I agree.
So there you have it. Next week, the plan is for us to release some audio from down there at the World Championship. We'll see what we can get set up there. So look forward to that. There is some other news in the world of curling. Tracy Fleury is joining Team Homan. Scott, we don't have a lot of time here, so just give me your one-word reaction to that, and we'll do a full recap and assessment of the teams once the season is over. But what was your initial one-word reaction when you heard on Friday night that Tracy Fleury was joining the team?
Meh.
Okay. All right. Mine was, huh? So it'll be curious to sort of see how that plays out. They don't have an announcement yet, or haven't officially announced what the lineup is going to be, who's throwing where. So we'll wait until that comes out to do a bit of a dive into that. Other news in the world of curling that affects really, really just us and some other people. I mean, he's a really good player, but Cam Goodkey is a free agent, according to the team tracker over on Curling Geek. And we love playing against Cam Goodkey here in Ottawa because you can start at 8:45, get 8 ends in before 10:45. It's a wonderful thing to play against him. So he is a free agent from his team. He's a former U Sport champion for the Carleton Ravens. And so, like I said, we'll do a full recap of all the lineup shifting once things have fully settled down and we get into the spring post all these world championships, because we are looking forward still to the action on the ice and the teams that are playing, including us, as we continue our march towards the end of the season. So do follow along with us for that, and subscribe if you have not yet, wherever you get your podcasts. Do likes, ratings, comments, all that good stuff. Helps other people find the show, keeps us growing. You can also head on over to GameOfStonesPod.com. All of our past episodes are there, plus the merch under the merch tab. All proceeds to the Sandra Schmirler Foundation and Food Banks Canada. We're matching all that as well. Of course, you can follow along and let us know what you want to hear on the show. Game of Stones Pod on Twitter and Instagram, Game of Stones Podcast on Facebook, and you can reach out Game of Stones Podcast at gmail.com. So that is that. Scott, we played last night. We referenced it at the start of the show. We won.
I just needed our skipper back in the fold. So
yeah, we did a full
win.
rotation on Skip Till You Lose without winning. After my last losses, or after we had a nice run, I got very lucky with some results as the skip. Then we had a 4-game losing streak and come back, and it was weird. Like I was throwing skip. I was lucky I played Sunday, and there was a real change in the ice, and I felt so confident throwing draws last night. I love that feeling when you're skipping and you know where it's going to go especially on draws. It felt really nice.
Yeah, it was pretty weird because I was sweeping your draws and I felt pretty good at knowing where you were going to put it as well. But then when it was my turn to throw, I think every shot I threw through. So I had no feel for it while I was throwing, but I could judge it pretty well from your throws. So yeah, good on. And now that you're going to Vegas, we're going to have to figure out a way to keep this winning streak alive because, of course, Sean, Barbucks are on the line.
Last draw. We're 2 games in. We're 2-0. And if we can win all 3, certainly, but if you win 2 of the next 3, very likely that Barbucks will be in our future. So that is the goal. So hopefully we can pull it off, and hopefully everyone out there, if you're out there playing, coming to the end of your season, hopefully you have a good one. I know a lot of folks are actually gearing up for seasons in places where you can get that ice in the summer in some of the arena leagues. So love hearing stories about how things are going for you. So do feel free to reach out. Love hearing about those. It's not all about the stuff on TV that makes the sport great. It's the stuff that happens, those minor victories like a draw against 5 in the second end to potentially save a game. So there you have it. Anything else, Scott?
Nope, that's all. You got to go, I think.
Yes. Thanks for listening, everybody. We certainly do appreciate it. We'll be back with you nearly live from Las Vegas next week. But until then, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that intern.
Make the final